Hi, we're continuing with cell biology and life science in a nutshell. So, we're learning about functional groups and what they look like. So, these are important parts of molecules, and molecules are important in determining cell functions in biology. So an alcohol is a chemical class called hydroxyl group. ROH is the formula. R stands for the rest of the substrate molecule bound to that group. So hydroxy means ROH. An example, methanol here. Carbons, 3 hydrogens, and OH. A ketone chemical class, group carbonyl, is an R and a carbon and an oxygen and another R. So the oxygen is double bound. Usually the prefix is keto or oxo. So an example, methyl ethyl ketone. So you got the carbon, double bound oxygen, and 3 other carbons. Aldehyde is carbon, double bound oxygen, and hydrogen to the R. So when aldo is used, acetaldehyde is an example. So with just 1 carbon to the O, a double bound, and an hydrogen. Carboxylic acid is R2COOH. So carbon, double bound oxygen, and OH are carboxy. And acetic acid is an example. So you just have 1 carbon, then the other carbon is double bound to oxygen and the hydrogen. Carboxylic acid, and then ether chemical class or group is ROR. So you have 2 R groups on either side, singly bound to an oxygen in the middle. And then alkoxy can be used as a prefix, or alkyl. An example, diethyl ether. So you have an oxygen, and then on either side you have 2 carbons, or double. So you have 4 carbons total, that molecule. And then an ester class or group is carbon, double bound oxygen to an oxygen, singly bound, and R's on either side. So you have total 2 oxygens, 1 single, 1 double. This is termed with alkyl. An example, ethyl butyrate. So you have carbon chains on either side, and then you have the carbon, 1 singly bound oxygen, 1 doubly bound in the center. And an amide is when you have an R group bound to a carbon, doubly bound to oxygen, then a nitrogen, and 2 additional R groups bound to the nitrogen. An example, acetamide. So you have a single carbon, then the other carbon bound doubly to an oxygen, and a nitrogen, an NH2 group. And then an amine is similar to an amide in that it has a nitrogen, however it does not have an oxygen. So it just has an R group, a nitrogen, and 2 hydrogens. An example, methylamine. So CH3, and then the carbons bound to nitrogen and 2 hydrogens coming off the nitrogen. So those are various organic functional groups. Some crazy functional groups An alene, you have carbon in the middle, two more carbons doubly bound to that carbon, um, with two hydrogens, so CH2 groups. So cycloalkanes are when you have rings of 6 carbons, such as in steroid molecules, where you have 6 carbon rings making up that molecule. A steroid has 3 cycloalkanes and 1 5 carbon ring as well. So steroids have 4 alkane groups. Highly stained cycloalkane. So these are just examples. Like carbamate, lactone, carbonate, ester. The esters have double bound oxygen, single bound plus a single bound oxygen. And you have urea with 2 NH groups on either side of a carbon, double bound to an oxygen. Then hemiacetal, acetal, hemiketal, ketal. So hemi means there's an OH group. And as well as an oxygen group. So ketals have 2 R groups. Alrighty. Let's see. So nitrile C triple bound to nitrogen, and then an R group of the carbon. Amine nitrogen double bound to carbon, a CH3 off the nitrogen. Nitro means NO2, so N is bound to an R group. Acid is N3 to an R group. Enamine, NH2 to the carbon, and a double bound, a carbon and another carbon, and then isocyanate. Looks crazy too. Carbon double bound to oxygen, double bound to nitrogen on either side, and then R group. Azuridine. Looks crazy. 3 membered ring, 2 carbons, 1 nitrogen. Carbodimide has 2 nitrogens, double bound to carbon, and R groups coming out. Hydrazine, NH2 groups, the 2 of them. Iodine is a chlorine and an iodine. Monochloride. So 1 chlorine, 1 iodine. Iodine pentafluoride. IF5. Hepta, IF7. Monobromide. Isothiocyanate. Carbon to sulfur, and then nitrogen on the other side in an R group. Disulfide, 2 sulfurs. Sulfur double bound to oxygens, and carbons coming off the sulfurs. So thioamide, sulfur double bound to carbon, then to nitrogen, and then carbon groups coming out on either side. So these are ball and stick figures. Hydroxyl OH found in carbohydrates, carbonyl CO found in lipids, carboxyl in proteins, amino in proteins, NH2, phosphate in DNA and ATP, P, and 4 oxygen atoms. So those are important. So I'll see you next time. Thank you.